The alien war camp was alive with laughter. Rough voices echoed across the steel platforms. Lights flickered in the smoky air. Hundreds of alien soldiers stood in rows, watching the scene below like it was some kind of circus. In the middle of the camp stood a small human woman, her hands chained above her head. Blood ran from her lip. Her clothes were torn. Dirt covered her face, yet her eyes stayed calm. Her name was Lieutenant Sarah Grant. Standing above her on a raised platform was Warlord Gorak, the leader of the Zarnok Empire's ground forces. He was 10 feet tall, muscles like stone, covered in thick spiked armor. His voice shook the ground when he spoke. "This soft creature," Gorak shouted, pointing at her. "This is the best Earth sends, a fragile female with no claws, no fangs, no armor." The crowd roared with laughter. Alien warriors from dozens of species pounded their fists, throwing rotten food at her. Sarah stayed silent. Gorak paced, his heavy boots shaking the floor. She begged for peace. She cried for mercy. "And now we will show her how mercy is given on Zarnok soil again." Laughter. Soldiers banged their weapons on the railings, chanting, "Crush her, crush her." Sarah blinked slowly. Her breathing stayed steady. Inside her head, she repeated the same thing over and over. Stay calm, calculate, wait. Flashback 2 days ago, just 48 hours earlier. Sarah had arrived at this camp in a small diplomatic shuttle. Earth Command had sent her with one mission: negotiate peace. The Zarnok had been pushing hard on Earth's outer colonies. Civilian ships were being destroyed. Earth was losing people. Sarah had walked into the main tent with her hands raised, asking for talks. She remembered Gorak's first words to her: talks. "We don't talk to pray." After that, they dragged her out. No food, no water. They beat her every day. Still, she waited. Back to now. The mockery continues. One alien soldier, a tall lizard-like creature, stepped closer to her. He poked her with a spear. "Maybe we let her run," he laughed. "Hunt her through the desert, make it sport." Another voice shouted, "No. Let the younglings practice their blade skills on her." The crowd cheered. Gorak smiled wide, enjoying every second. "Bring the cameras closer," Gorak ordered. "Let the whole galaxy see how we break Earth's spirit." High above, drones hovered, live streaming the event. Across the galaxy, people would soon see Earth's representative fall. But no one noticed Sarah's fingers. Slowly, carefully, she twisted her wrist. The steel cuffs made a soft sound. Almost nothing. But inside, microfractures began to spread. Her muscles tensed, controlled, focused. The soldiers laughed louder. A group of younger warriors ran forward, holding sticks and blunt weapons. They wanted to be the first to hit her. Sarah counted each step they took. 3 meters, 2. Sudden silence. A sharp crack echoed through the air. The first cuff snapped. But young warriors froze mid-step before anyone understood what was happening. Sarah's right arm swung free. In one smooth motion, she caught the nearest warrior by the throat and lifted him off the ground. Gasps filled the air. The lizard soldier dropped his stick, clawing at her hand. His feet kicked wildly in the air. With a single jerk, she broke his neck. The body dropped like a sack of meat. Silence. Silence for a full 5 seconds. Not a single alien moved. Sarah's left arm pulled against the second cuff. With a metallic scream, the chain broke. Now both her hands were free. She looked up at Gorak, her lip bleeding, eyes burning. "You wanted a show," she said quietly. Then, she moved. "The bloodbath begins." The second warrior ran at her with a blade. Sarah stepped sideways, grabbed his arm, twisted, and drove his own blade into his chest. A third jumped at her. She ducked low, swept his legs, then stomped on his throat. Screams filled the air. The front row of soldiers backed away, confused and terrified. On the raised platform, Gorak's smile vanished. "Guts, kill her now," he roared. Dozens of armed Zarnok soldiers rushed from all sides. Sarah didn't stop. Her body moved like a machine, fast, efficient, brutal. She caught one soldier's spear mid-swing, snapped it in half, and drove the sharp end into another warrior's chest. Another soldier fired a plasma bolt at her. She ducked and closed the distance in 3 steps, punching the shooter so hard that his helmet cracked open. The air smelled of burning flesh and blood. In the control room nearby, a young alien technician screamed into the comms, "She's breaking through. Someone stop her." But it was too late. The cameras keep rolling high above. The drones still streamed live footage. Billions across the galaxy were now watching. On Earth, command centers received the video feed. Generals and soldiers stared at the screen in disbelief. One colonel whispered, "Is that Sarah Grant?" Another answered, voice shaking, "God help the Zarnok." Gorak's rage. On the platform, Gorak drew his warhammer. He slammed it into the floor, sending cracks through the metal. "I want tanks," he screamed. "Block her path. She cannot reach me." His elite guards formed a wall between her and the platform. Heavy soldiers in black armor, carrying plasma shields. Sarah paused for the first time. Her breathing was heavy, but her eyes burned brighter. She took one step forward, then another, and then she ran. Final blow of part 1 like a thunderstorm. She charged the elite guards her shoulder, crashed into the first shield, metal bent. The guard behind it flew backward like a broken doll. The second and third guards tried to hold formation. Sarah grabbed both shields with her bare hands and ripped them apart. The soldiers screamed, bones snapped, shields tore like paper, gasps and terrified cries spread across the camp. For the first time, Warlord Gorak, the conqueror of 6 planets, felt fit. The night air smelled of smoke, blood, and burning metal. Sarah Grant stood in the middle of the Zarnok war camp, her chest rising and falling, her fists covered in blood. All around her, alien soldiers lay broken and unconscious. Some were still alive, crawling away in fear. Others didn't move at all. For the first time in years, the camp went completely silent. Thousands of soldiers stood frozen in place, staring at the human woman who had just torn through Gorak's front line. The command center panic in the main control tower overlooking the battlefield. Alarms started to scream. Red lights flashed. "Security breach at the main gate," shouted a technician. "Security breach at the armory," shouted another. Gorak's top officer, a one-eyed alien named Korth, slammed his fist on the console. "She's moving too fast. Where are the tanks?" Korth roared. A trembling voice replied, "Mobilizing now, Commander." But she already near the eastern perimeter. "How?" Korth shouted. "That's a 10-minute run." "She did it in 30 seconds, the soldier said, voice shaking. Korth turned to the main screen. The camera showed Sarah running at full speed, leaping over walls, smashing through doors. Her speed, her strength, it wasn't human. Inside the armory, Sarah crashed through the steel door of the Zarnok armory. Rows of plasma rifles, energy blades, and heavy launchers lined the walls. She scanned the room quickly. She didn't want guns. She didn't need guns. Instead, her eyes locked onto something bigger. A plasma cannon nearly 2 meters long, designed to be mounted on vehicles. No human should be able to lift it without power armor. Sarah grabbed the cannon with both hands and lifted it off the rack like it was made of plastic. The weight didn't slow her down. She walked out of the armory, carrying the massive weapon like a club. The tanks arrive outside. For Zarnok, tanks rolled into position, each one armed with plasma turrets capable of vaporizing steel. Gorak stood on the command platform, pointing toward her. "Fire now." The tanks lit up, unleashing blasts of blue plasma. The ground shook. Explosions tore through the air. Dust and fire covered the battlefield. For a few seconds, no one could see her. Gorak let out a breath. "It's done," he growled. But when the dust cleared, Sarah was still standing. Smoke rose from her shoulders. Her clothes burned at the edges, but her eyes stayed fixed on him. Without hesitation, she lifted the plasma cannon, aimed at the nearest tank, and pulled the trigger. The cannon roars. The tank exploded in a ball of fire. Shrapnel flew in all directions. Nearby soldiers dived for cover, screaming in panic. Sarah turned, firing. Again, the second tank burst apart, its turret flying into the air like a toy. By the time she fired at the third, the fourth tank had already started retreating in reverse, trying to escape, but she didn't stop. Her steps quickened, her strength grew. With every second, every soldier in her path turned and ran. Gorak's growing fear in the platform. Gorak's eyes widened. "She's unstoppable," Korth whispered beside him. "Shut up," Gorak growled. "I want air support. Dropships, bombers. I want her dead." Korth hesitated. "Sir, there's something else." "What now?" "We ran a face scan on her and checked the Earth's military files." Korth handed Gorak a tablet. On the screen, Project Atlas, Experimental Human Weaponization Program. Subject Lieutenant Sarah Grant. Status: terminated. Classified. Do not engage without level 10. Clarence Segarak's throat went dry. "Not a diplomat," Korth said quietly. "She's a weapon." The chase through the camp. Sarah moved like a storm. She tore through barracks, blasted through towers, climbed over walls like they were playground equipment. Drones flew overhead, trying to track her, but she shot them down with stolen rifles. Elite soldiers tried to flank her. She picked them off, one by one. A sniper took aim from a distant rooftop. Before he could fire, she threw a broken shield like a discus, striking him in the head and knocking him off the roof. Every direction she moved, soldiers ran the other way. The soldiers fell across the camp, Word spread fast. The human, she's not stopping. Fall back, she's a ghost. A demon. Some dropped their weapons. Others climbed into transports, trying to escape the camp. One commander screamed orders at his men. Stand your ground, for the Warlord. But the fear was too strong. Discipline broke. Soldiers fled in every direction. The air support Reeves Gorak's bombers finally appeared over the camp. Black shadows against the moonlit sky. Dozens of missiles launched at Sarah's position. The ground split apart. Fires erupted everywhere. For a moment it looked like they had her. Flames covered the field. Smoke blocked all view. Is she down? Korth asked. But before anyone answered, a piece of burning debris flew upward, thrown by a single human hand. Sarah burst out of the fire like a monster of war. Her skin burned, but her eyes stayed locked on her target. Gorak. Her target is clear. Sarah dropped the now empty plasma cannon. She didn't need it anymore. She grabbed a fallen energy blade and started running toward the command tower. Barricades. She smashed through them. Energy fences. She jumped them. Heavy gunfire. She dodged it with inhuman speed, step by step. She closed the distance. Gorak's voice cracked as he shouted, "Everyone, stop her now." But even Gorak knew. It was too late. The command center in chaos inside the tower. Gorak's officers panicked. Screens showed Sarah getting closer. One by one, defensive lines collapsed. An officer turned to Gorak, pale and shaking. "We have to evacuate, sir." Oog smashed his fist into the wall. "No," he roared. "We finish this here." He grabbed his massive warhammer from the wall and marched toward the lift. The final moments of Part 2 AS. The lift doors opened. Gorak stepped out onto the balcony, just in time to see Sarah leaping over the last wall and charging straight for him, her face covered in blood and ash, her fists clenched tight. Her voice rang out over the entire camp. "You wanted war. Now you've got it." The ground trembled as Warlord Gorak stomped onto the balcony, gripping his massive warhammer in both hands. From where he stood, he could see the full battlefield: smoke, fire, shattered vehicles, and hundreds of fallen soldiers. And there, she was, Lieutenant Sarah Grant, standing in the open, staring up at him like she wasn't afraid of anything. Her clothes were burned, her skin bruised and bleeding, but her eyes burned with deadly focus. Gorak's heart pounded, with a strange feeling he hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not pride. Fear. Gorak's rage ignites. Deploy the black claws. Gorak roared. A deep siren blared across the camp. From underground bunkers, dozens of heavily armored alien warriors emerged. Gorak's personal elite guard. They were taller, faster, and stronger than regular soldiers. Each one carried plasma, shields, and dual energy blades. They moved as one, forming a thick wall of muscle and armor between Sarah and the tower entrance. The black claws prepared. Korth, the one-eyed officer, barked orders from the control room. "Full lockdown. No one enters or leaves this tower." Towers armed with auto-turrets rotated towards Sarah's position. Gorak stood at the top floor, slamming his warhammer against the ground, sending shockwaves through the metal floor plates. "Let her come," Gorak growled. "I'll crush her with my own hands." Sarah charges forward. Down below, Sarah stood still for a second, analyzing the formation in front of her. 30 black claws. Full armor, full shields, full weapons. Any normal human would stop. Any normal human would run, but Sarah wasn't normal. With a roar that made even the bravest soldiers flinch, she charged. The first impact, the front line of black claws lowered their shields. A storm of plasma bolts fired toward her. Sarah zigzagged between the blasts. Her feet barely touched the ground as she weaved through death. The first soldier swung his blade. Sarah caught his arm mid-strike and twisted hard. Bone cracked. The warrior screamed. Another soldier tried to stab her from behind. Without looking, she spun, grabbed him by the neck, and threw him into 3 others like bowling pins. The formation broke, just for a second, but that was all she needed. The brutal close combat. Sarah dove into the heart of the black claws like a wrecking ball. Her fists slammed into armored chests, breaking ribs. Her knees drove into helmets, smashing visors. Every punch, every kick, felt like it carried the weight of a starship engine. Blades sliced at her, leaving cuts on her arms and legs. Plasma bolts burned her skin, but she didn't stop. With a battle cry that shook the camp, she grabbed 2 soldiers by their chest plates and smashed their heads together so hard their helmets caved in. Korth's desperation in the command tower. Korth stared at the monitor. "She's breaking through the black claws," he shouted. "That's impossible," another officer whispered. Korth turned to Gorak. "Sir, we should leave now. This is no longer a battle, it's a slaughter." Gorak's eyes burned with fury. "No," he growled. "Seal the lift, she's coming to me, and when she arrives, I'll end this myself." Sarah reaches the tower with a final roar. Sarah tore through the last 2 black claws. Her body shook with exhaustion, but she kept moving. Blood dripped from her hands. She stood in front of the tower doors, thick, reinforced, nearly indestructible. Korth's voice crackled over the loudspeakers. "Give up, human. This door can withstand ship-level cannon fire. You'll never break through." Sarah stepped back, took a deep breath, and with a full body charge she punched the door. The first impact dented the steel. The second cracked it on the third. The door burst inward like it was made of cardboard. Inside the tower, alarms screamed. Officers ran for cover. Sarah moved floor by floor, smashing through defense teams. Gorak waited on the top floor, pacing like a caged animal, his warhammer glowing with energy. As she reached the final stairwell, Gorak spoke into the intercom. "Wanted me, little human? Then come and take your death." The final confrontation begins. Sarah kicked open the last door. There stood Gorak, warhammer in hand. He was even bigger up close. Muscles like stone, armor thicker than tank plating. "Do you really think you can win?" Gorak asked, stepping forward. Sarah wiped the blood from her mouth. "I don't think," she said coldly. "I know." And without another word, she attacked. The Battle of John Skorok swung his hammer with enough force to crush a car. Sarah ducked low, rolled sideways, and landed a punch into Gorak's ribs. He grunted, stumbled back, but recovered quickly. Swinging again, the hammer smashed the floor, sending debris flying. Sarah closed the distance, slamming her knee into Gorak's faceplate. Gorak roared in pain. Blood poured from his mouth. The room shook from their fight. Consoles shattered. Walls cracked. Korth and the officers watched from camera feeds, too scared to get close. Sarah's second wind. Gorak lifted his hammer high for a killing blow, but Sarah was faster. She jumped, twisted mid-air, and delivered a double-fisted strike to Gorak's chest. The force sent him flying across the room, slamming into the control panel. Electric sparks burst around him. Gorak struggled to stand. Blood dripped from his mouth and nose. "You can't beat me," he gasped. Sarah walked toward him, her shadow long and dark across the broken floor. "Watch me," she said, with one final scream. She grabbed Gorak by the throat, lifted him off the ground, and slammed him through his own command table with earth-shaking force. The Warlord's armor cracked. His head rolled to the side, unconscious. Ending scene. The camp falls silent. The tower fell silent, for the first time since the battle started. No orders came, no screams, no gunfire. Thousands of soldiers across the camp stared at the tower, waiting for the next sound. And then the loudspeakers crackled on. Sarah's voice came through, slow, steady, deadly. "This war is over. For you." The war camp stood frozen for the first time in Zarnok history. Their warlord had fallen. Inside the command tower, Sarah Grant stood over Gorak's unconscious body. Her breath came in hard, heavy bursts. Blood dripped from her fists. Her clothes hung in tatters. Burns covered her skin, but she was still standing, still strong, still dangerous. And now, she had full control. The soldiers' confusion across the camp. Thousands of alien soldiers lowered their weapons. Some stared at the tower with wide, terrified eyes. Others dropped their guns and fell to their knees. No one knew what to do. For them, Gorak had been untouchable, a living god, the conqueror of 6 worlds. But now, he lay broken on the floor like any other soldier. In the control room far above, in the secondary control center, Officer Korth watched the live feed in shock, his face pale, his good eye wide with fear. "She took him down," he whispered. Another officer beside him said, "Sir, what do we do? Should we counterattack? Should we call reinforcements?" Korth's voice trembled. "No, no counterattack. Not now, not against that." He turned to the comms officer. "Get me full data on her, everything Earth military has. I want to know what the hell we're facing." The classified files. Moments later, Korth held a digital tablet in his shaking hands. Lines of classified Earth data scrolled across the screen. Project Atlas Human Weapon PROGRA Name Lieutenant Sarah Grant. Codename Atlas 7. Program Status Terminated Public Record. Active Black File. Mission Type High Risk E. Total Annihilation. Responsibilities Enhanced Strength, Speed, Pain Tolerance, Regeneration, Advanced Combat Training, Mental Conditioning, Unbreakable under Torture Deployment Level. Only authorized for planetary level threat scores. Mouth went dry as he read the last line. Warning, do not engage unless planetary extinction is acceptable risk. Flashback, how it all started years ago. Sarah had been a normal soldier, loyal, brave, but human. After a brutal ambush on Colony Delta 14, she was left near death. Earth scientists gave her a choice: die or become something else. She chose survival. They rebuilt her from the inside out. Her muscles, bones, nervous system, everything was enhanced. Pain, she didn't feel it like normal humans anymore. Fear, gone, and mental conditioning, programmed to endure, programmed to fight until the mission was done. Earth called the project Atlas Initiative because soldiers like her carried the weight of worlds. Back to the present, standing over Gorak's body, Sarah turned toward the central broadcast panel. She flipped switches, adjusted dials. Within seconds, every speaker across the camp came to life. The speech that shook the galaxy, her voice echoed from every loudspeaker. To every soldier still listening, your warlord is down. Your command structure is broken. Aliens froze across the camp. Some dropped their weapons on the spot. Sarah continued. This is your only warning. Lay down your arms, stand down, or— She looked at Gorak's broken body, then back at the cameras. I will finish what I started. The soldiers' reaction. A slow ripple moved through the alien ranks. First one group dropped their weapons, then another. Within minutes, hundreds, then thousands of soldiers were kneeling, hands raised, signaling surrender. The Zarnok army, the most feared ground force in this quadrant, was surrendering to one human woman. Meanwhile, across the galaxy and distant planets, where the live feeds still streamed, other alien warlords watched the footage with growing horror. They had seen Gorak's fall. They had heard Sarah's voice. Messages started flying across war channels. Is this true? Did Earth deploy a weapon? What is Project Atlas? Some started ordering defensive positions on their own worlds. Others quietly began pulling back their fleets from Earth space. Earth Command, watchers back on Earth. Inside the United Military Command Center, generals and officers stood around the main screen. They had watched the entire battle, from Sarah breaking her chains to her speech. General Martinez leaned forward. Is this feed live? Yes, sir, said the technician. Martinez let out a slow breath. Project Atlas was never supposed to go public, he said quietly. Another officer laughed, nervously. Well, it's public now. Martinez smiled. Good. Let the galaxy watch. Gorak awakens inside the broken tower. Gorak's eyes fluttered open. He coughed hard, blood spilling from his mouth. When he tried to sit up, pain shot through every inch of his body. Looking up, he saw Sarah standing over him. For the first time in his life, the mighty warlord Gorak lowered his eyes in defeat. Sarah crouched beside him and whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. Earth tried to talk. You didn't listen now. Stay down. Gorak closed his eyes, too weak to respond. Ending hook for Part 4. Sarah stood tall, looking over the war camp she had just broken. But in the distance, through the clouds of smoke, she could see new ships arriving. Not Earth ships. Not Zarnok reinforcements. Something else, unknown, and heading straight for the planet. Her fight was not over yet. Smoke still hung heavy over the war camp. Sarah stood on top of the damaged command tower, watching the sky. Her breath was steady now. Her wounds were already starting to heal, but her eyes narrowed when she saw the distant lights growing larger by the second. New ships, unknown, and getting closer fast. Incoming threat inside the tower. Officer Korth received the alert first. Sir, we're detecting multiple incoming vessels. Unknown design. No Zarnok signature. No Earth code either. Korth's voice shook. Who are they? The radar tech shouted. They're fast. Bigger than standard assault ships. And they're armed. Korth turned to the broken warlord Gorak, still unconscious on the floor. Then to the external cameras showing the burning camp. We're defenseless, Korth whispered. His officers stood frozen. No tanks left. No Black Claws. No air support. And now, a new enemy was coming. Sarah makes a decision. Sarah didn't wait for more information. She grabbed a fallen plasma rifle from the floor, checked its charge level, and headed down the stairwell. Step by step, she made her way toward the main gate. Soldiers she had defeated earlier now moved aside when they saw her. Some even lowered their heads in respect or fear. Sarah didn't care. She had one mission left now: protect the camp from whatever was coming next. The unknown fleet high above the atmosphere. 10 massive black ships broke through the clouds. Their hulls were sharp, dark, covered in unfamiliar symbols. They moved in complete silence. No warning, no communication. Then, without hesitation, they opened fire. Red plasma bolts rained down onto the war camp. Explosions tore through the air. Buildings collapsed. Soldiers screamed. Sarah rallies the survivors without wasting time. Sarah grabbed a nearby loudspeaker unit and shouted across the camp, "All units take cover. regroup at the southern trenches. Some Zarnok soldiers hesitated, but when she sprinted forward toward the fire, others followed. For the first time, human and alien soldiers fought side by side, not as allies, but for survival. Sarah dragged wounded soldiers to safety. She flipped overturned vehicles into makeshift shields, and she led charge after charge to protect the remaining defensive lines. The last linecorps rushed outside to see Sarah standing at the front of the southern trenches. Around her, less than 200 soldiers remained standing, wounded, scared, but ready to fight. Korth ran to her side, panting. We don't stand a chance," he gasped. Sarah kept her eyes on the sky. "We hold the line," she said simply. Korth stared at her like she was insane. "Against them? Are you crazy? We're dead if we stay here." Sarah reloaded her rifle and answered, "We're dead if we run too." The ground assault beginstraffips from the unknown fleet landed just beyond the perimeter. Tall, armored soldiers emerged, gray-skinned giants with glowing red eyes. Their armor looked like liquid metal. Their weapons, crackling energy cannons bigger than anything Zarnok had seen. These weren't pirates, these weren't random raiders, they were professional, and deadly. Sarah clenched her fists. "Everyone, hold your fire, until I say." Tension builds. The enemy forces lined up outside the trench range. One of the enemy soldiers stepped forward, holding a strange device. He pressed a button. A robotic voice echoed across the battlefield. "Surrender, or face total elimination. You have 1 minute." Silence fell. Korth looked at Sarah, sweating. "What do we do?" he whispered. Sarah adjusted her grip on the rifle. "We fight the first wave at exactly 60 seconds. The enemy charged. Energy cannons lit the air with beams of blue and red Zarnok. Soldiers fired back with whatever weapons they had left. Sarah led from the front. Her shots were deadly accurate. Each burst of plasma took down one of the enemy giants. But for every enemy that fell, 3 more pushed forward. Close combat chaos. When the enemy closed the distance, it turned into brutal hand-to-hand combat. Sarah ripped weapons from enemy hands and used them as clubs. She kicked one soldier through a steel wall. Another enemy aimed at Korth. Sarah tackled him to the ground, saving his life at the last second. Korth lay on the ground, gasping, looking at her with wide, terrified eyes. "You're insane," he muttered. Sarah stood, offering him a hand. "No," she said, "just determined." The line begins to break. After 20 minutes of constant fighting, the trench line began to collapse. Soldiers fell back. More enemy dropships arrived. Korth shouted, "We're out of ammo, we can't hold them." Sarah's body ached. Her arms felt like lead. Blood dripped into her eyes. But still, she stood at the front. When another enemy soldier charged at her, she picked up a broken metal beam and drove it through his chest like a spear. The battlefield shook. Explosions rang out. The last defensive line was now breaking. The final push. Sarah climbed to the highest point of the trench, raising a fallen Zarnok banner like a war signal. Her voice rang out over the noise. No retreat. Fight them until your last breath. Zarnok. Soldiers, seeing her stand tall and refusing to fall, screamed back with what little strength they had left. For the first time, they fought not for Gorak, but for survival. And for her. The last stand. The enemy charged in one final wave. Sarah roared, charging forward to meet them head-on. She swung fists, grabbed weapons, dodged blasts, and moved like a force of nature. Even as her vision blurred, even as her muscles tore, she kept fighting. Korth, bleeding and half-conscious, whispered, "If we die, at least we die behind her." Ending hook for Part 5. Just as the enemy forces began to surround Sarah from all sides, a sudden, massive explosion rocked the entire battlefield. Everyone enemy and a light turned toward the northern sky. Dozens of Earth warships had just jumped out of hyperspace, and they were already opening fire on the invaders. Sarah smiled, bloody and bruised. "They're here," she whispered. The battlefield was shaking. Smoke, fire, and dust filled the air as Earth warships descended through the atmosphere. Their cannons lit up the sky, raining plasma fire onto the enemy landing zones. Explosions tore through the unknown soldiers that had nearly overwhelmed Sarah's last line. For the first time in hours, the enemy advance stopped. Earth's arrival. Massive dropships from Earth touched down near the trenches. Hundreds of Earth soldiers in heavy armor stormed out, taking positions beside the Zarnok survivors. They didn't question why Zarnok soldiers stood beside human troops. They saw one thing: Sarah Grant, still standing at the front line, bloodied but alive. And that was enough for them. The enemy pulls back. The unknown attackers, seeing Earth reinforcements arriving in huge numbers, started retreating toward their dropships. Their commanders shouted new orders. Smoke grenades launched, creating thick cover. Within minutes the battlefield cleared of enemy presence, but Sarah knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Medical teams rush in as Earth medics reached Sarah. She stumbled and almost collapsed. Her body screamed with pain. Cuts, burns, broken ribs, muscle tears, injuries no normal human could survive. But she stayed. On her feet, Lieutenant Grant, one medic shouted. "We need to get you to a field hospital." Sarah shook her head. Later she gasped. "First, where's Gorak?" Gorak awakens inside the lower levels of the command tower. Warlord. Gorak slowly opened his eyes. He lay strapped to a reinforced table, heavy chains locking his arms and legs. His body felt like stone. Every muscle burned. Two Earth soldiers stood at the door, weapons ready, watching him closely. Gorak coughed, blood spilling from his mouth. In his mind, blurry memories returned. Sarah's face, her voice, her fists slamming into him. And now, silence. Sarah heads to the tower despite the medics' protests. Sarah limped toward the command tower. Earth generals tried to stop her. "Lieutenant, you're too injured. Let us handle the prisoner." Sarah kept moving. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "This is between me and him." The soldiers stepped aside. No one was brave enough to block her path. The confrontation inside the tower. Gorak lifted his head as Sarah entered. Her face was pale, her clothes still torn. Blood covered her, yet she stood tall, like she wasn't broken at all. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, no words, just silence. Finally, Gorak spoke, voice weak but filled with hate. "You are not human." Sarah stepped closer. "You're right," she said softly. "Not anymore." Gorak tried to pull against his chains, but pain shot through his body. "You're a monster," he spat. Sarah smiled bitterly. "I became this because people like you left me no choice." Flashback. Her transformation. Sarah remembered the cold operating rooms, the surgeons, the endless tests, her bones being rebuilt with reinforced carbon mesh, her muscles enhanced with biosynthetic fibers, her nervous system rewired to ignore pain signals, all to make her into a living weapon. She had begged for peace once. Now, she didn't beg for anything. Gorak's defeat. Gorak lowered his head, breathing hard. "For centuries, I ruled, I conquered, I was feared," he whispered. Sarah nodded. "Now you'll live long enough to remember this defeat," she said, "and to watch Earth grow stronger, every day." Gorak laughed bitterly. "We'll rise again. Zarnok never stays down." Sarah leaned closer to him and said, "Next time, we won't send just me." Gorak's face twisted in fear. Outside the tower, Earth officers watched as dropships loaded the remaining Zarnok prisoners for transport. General Martinez stood near the edge of the battlefield, watching the smoke clear. One officer beside him asked, "Sir, what do we do with her now? She disobeyed orders, caused a full-scale war, and still saved an entire front line." Martinez sighed. "We don't punish heroes," he said. "We debrief them, and then we prepare for what comes next." The officer nodded. Double quotes. "And what about the unknown attackers?" Martinez's face darkened. "We'll find them," he said. "And when we do, we'll send her." Sarah's last look at the battlefield as she stepped outside the tower. Sarah paused for a long moment. She looked at the burning fields, the ruined tanks, the broken defenses, and then she looked at the Zarnok soldiers sitting in the dirt, alive. Because of her, some of them stared at her with hate, some with fear, but a few with respect. Sarah whispered to herself, "One war ends, another begins." Final scene of Part 6. High above the planet, Earth warships prepared for departure. Deep in space, in a dark, cold corner of the galaxy, the unknown enemy fleet regrouped, and this time they weren't coming to invade just a camp. They were coming for Earth itself. Earth orbit. Dozens of warships floated above the blue planet, engines humming softly. Inside the United Earth command ship, Resolute, top generals and government leaders gathered in the war room. Large screens showed enemy fleet movements across the galaxy. New targets appeared every hour. The unknown attackers, now identified as the Velka Dominion, were preparing for a full-scale invasion of Earth, and time was running out. The growing threat. General Martinez stood near the main display. Red enemy markers filled half the screen. "We estimate they'll reach Earth's orbit in 3 days, an intelligence officer said. "Any chance for peace talks?" asked a diplomat. Another officer shook his head. No response to hails, no negotiation attempts. They only send one message: total extermination. Silence fell across the room. "Where is Sarah Grant?" someone finally asked. "Where's Lieutenant Grant?" a young comms officer replied. "Sir, she's in the observation deck, alone." Martinez nodded. Bring her here now. Sarah's state of mind. Sarah stood near a large observation window, staring at Earth below. Her body was still healing. Bandages covered her arms and shoulders, but her mind, it was already planning the next battle. When the soldier arrived and said, "General wants you in the war room," she didn't hesitate. Without a word, she turned and walked toward the command center. The war room falls silent when Sarah entered. The room went quiet. Generals, diplomats, officers, everyone turned to look at her. Some with fear, some with awe, a few with guilt. They had once called her unstable, too dangerous, a failed experiment. But now they knew the truth. She was Earth's best chance at survival. The request, no one expected. General Martinez stood. "Lieutenant Grant," he began, "we need you for one last thing." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "A mission?" Martinez shook his head. "A speech." Sarah froze. "What?" Martinez walked closer. "We've sent fleets to defend every colony, but morale is collapsing. Soldiers are deserting. Civilians are panicking. Even some of our allies are thinking of surrendering to the Velka before they even arrive." Sarah's face hardened. "So you want me to talk?" Martinez nodded. Double quotes. "Not just talk. Inspire. Give them a reason to fight. You're not just a soldier anymore. You're a symbol. The galaxy saw you break Gorak. They saw you lead the defense when no one else could. Now they need to hear your voice." Preparing the broadcast technicians rushed to set up the largest live broadcast Earth had ever attempted. It would reach every colony, every fleet, every soldier, even civilian homes. The entire human race, waiting for one voice. Sarah's doubt standing behind the camera. Sarah adjusted the bandages on her arm. Her heart pounded, not from fear of war, but from fear of failing this new task. Fighting was simple, direct, clear, but this, speaking to millions, maybe billions, felt harder than facing Gorak himself. General Martinez walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "No fancy words," he said softly. "Just speak from your heart." Sarah nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. The speech that changed everything. The camera light turned red. The live feed went out across the galaxy. Sarah stood alone, looking straight at billions of screens. Her voice started low, but steady. "This is Lieutenant Sarah Grant. Some of you know my name. Some of you watched what happened at the Zarnok camp. I didn't ask to become what I am now. I didn't choose to be rebuilt, enhanced, turned into a weapon, but I did choose to stand, to fight, to survive, and now, I'm asking you to do the same." The room behind the camera stayed dead silent. Sarah continued. "The Velka Dominion isn't coming for our armies. They aren't coming for our leaders. They're coming for our homes, our families, our right to exist. They want us to kneel. They want us to surrender, but we won't." Her voice grew louder, stronger. "We will stand on every planet, every colony, every ship. We will hold the line, because this is our home and we fight for Earth." The galaxy reacts across military outposts. Soldiers cheered. On mining colonies, workers stood tall, raising their tools like weapons. On research stations, scientists who had never fired a gun began building defenses. Even former enemies, small Zarnok outposts, heard the broadcast. Some of them raised their weapons preparing to stand against the Velk or Sarah. After the speeches, the broadcast ended. Sarah stood still, breathing heavily. For the first time, her hands trembled, not from fear but from emotional weight. Martinez walked over and smiled. "You just changed the war," he said. Sarah turned to him. "Now let me finish it," she replied, ending hook for part 7. As she turned toward the war map, an alarm sounded. "Velka fleet has entered Sol system." Earth was now officially under siege. The final battle was about to begin. The warning sirens rang across every Earth city, space station, and colony. On every screen, the same message flashed. Velka invasion fleet now entering Earth orbit. The Velka are modern, the blackness of space. Thousands of massive Velka warships surrounded Earth. Their engines glowed red, their weapons charged. For the first time in human history, Earth itself was under full-scale siege. Velka commanders sent one final message: surrender, or be destroyed. The Earth Defense Forces mobilized. Earth's orbit lit up as hundreds of human warships took formation. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, even outdated ships were pulled from museums and fitted with weapons. On the ground, civilians rushed into bunkers, cities locked down, anti-orbital cannons turned toward the sky. Every soldier, every pilot, every technician was now part of Earth's last defense. Sarah prepares for one last fight. Inside the command ship, resolute, Sarah stood on the main deck, her wounds from the last battle still hurt, but her spirit burned stronger than ever. Earth Command had given her full control of Strike Team Omega, the last line of elite ground fighters. Their mission: hold the capital at all costs. General Martinez stood beside her. "This is it, Sarah," he said quietly. "Win or Earth falls." Sarah nodded. "Tell the fleet. Full engagement. No holding back." The battle begins. Space erupted in bright flashes as Earth's fleet opened fire. Missiles, plasma bolts, railguns, every weapon fired at once. Ships returned fire. Dozens of Earth ships exploded within seconds. But still, the human fleet pushed forward. Fighters darted between enemy capital ships, launching torpedoes at vulnerable spots on the ground. Defense cannons lit up the skies. Ground invasion starts after hours of space battle. The first Velka dropships broke through. They landed across key points on Earth major cities, power grids, defense hubs. One of the largest landing zones was just outside Earth's capital city, New Geneva, and waiting for them was Sarah, Grant, and Strike Team Omega. The final ground battle. Velka soldiers stormed the street, staller stronger, with energy weapons far more advanced, but Sarah charged straight at them. Her body moved faster than ever before. One punch broke enemy armor, one kick sent 3 attackers flying into a building wall. Her team fought beside her: humans, Zarnok, defectors, even civilian volunteers. The streets became a battlefield of blood, fire, and courage. Sarah climbed a ruined tank, waving the Earth flag high. "Nitrogen monoxide retreat," she screamed. "Fight for every inch." Her words echoed across the city. The turning point as the battle raged. More and more Earth forces arrived. Heavy mechs stomped through the streets. Artillery pounded. Enemy DROPSHIPS. Air support strafed Velka positions. But even with all that, the Velka pushed forward. Street by street, block by block, they kept coming. Sarah's last gambit, with defenses breaking and losses mounting. Sarah made a choice. She gathered explosives from fallen enemies and rigged them into a massive trap inside the city's main power grid. Korth, standing beside her, now wearing Earth military colors, stared at the timer she had set. "You'll kill yourself doing this," he warned. Sarah smiled, blood running down her face. "Then I'll take as many of them with me as I can." Korth hesitated, then saluted her. "You're mad, human, but I'll follow you anyway." The suicide-run Sarah and a small strike group charged toward the Velka Central Command post right in the heart of the enemy landing zone. They moved through gunfire, explosions, collapsing buildings. Sarah tore through enemy lines with pure force, ignoring pain, pushing beyond human limits. With one final leap, she reached the enemy's energy core station. She set the timer on the explosives. 60 seconds, the last minute as the timer counted down. She fought off waves of enemy soldiers, refusing to fall. General Martinez's voice came over the emergency comm channel. "Sarah, pull back. You won't survive that blast." Sarah responded with her last words on the channel. "If this is how I go, let it be loud." The explosion. The core station exploded in a fireball that lit up the entire city. The shockwave vaporized hundreds of enemy troops instantly. Velka command systems crashed. Their communications broke. The invading fleet, confused and leaderless, began retreating. Earth's warships took the chance, chasing and destroying dozens more enemy ships. Aftermath. For hours, the battle raged. But by dawn, Earth stood victorious. Velka forces scattered back into deep space. Humanity had survived, but at a cost. Searching for rescue teams searched the blast zone for survivors. They found scorched earth, destroyed buildings, burned out vehicles, but no body, not a single trace of Sarah Grant. General Martinez stood at the edge of the crater, staring at the smoke. "She was our shield," he said quietly. "Our sword." Korth stood beside him, silent. Final scene, a new beginning. Weeks later, a small outpost on the edge of human space received a strange signal. A faint, scrambled voice, barely recognizable, but familiar. The technician cleaned up the audio and played it. A single sentence came through. "This isn't over." The voice, unmistakably Sarah Grant's.